Hello, Jack Olmsted. I'm with Seattle PI Reader Blog, Video Blogging 206, and I'm here today with Mark Renneson. He's with Third Shot Sports, Ontario, Canada. Is that where you're located?
Collingwood, Ontario, Canada, yep.
Collingwood, Ontario, Canada. How's the weather up there today, Mark?
It's beautiful. It's warmish and it's sunny and the courts are dry and people are out there playing. Yeah, it's great.
That's great. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background? How did you get involved with pickleball?
Sure. This started not quite 2 years ago. It started in the fall of 2015. I had just moved to, actually, I guess, the spring of 2015. I just moved to Collingwood, a small town, 20,000 people, from Vancouver, Canada. And in an effort to meet some people, I joined the Y. And at our local YMCA, I realized we had lots of pickleball, and I didn't know what it was. But I joined and I played fairly successfully pretty quickly, and realized that while many people were playing pickleball, there weren't that many people in my region that were coaching it, and certainly none that had an extensive background in coaching. And coming from teaching tennis for almost 2 decades, I thought that I might be able to make a contribution. So I started Third Shot Sports, and our 2 branches, Third Shot Tennis and Third Shot Pickleball, emerged from that. And since then, it's been teaching tennis lessons, teaching pickleball lessons to individuals, to groups, doing videos, and doing fun events like this with you.
What's your educational background?
I did my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's at the University of Toronto. That was a degree in philosophy. And after that, I found that the kind of philosophy that I was most interested in was the philosophy that I felt was practical and could make a difference in someone's life. And so I was drawn to philosophy education and philosophy of sport. And so I did a master's degree at the University of Toronto in philosophy education. And after that, I moved out to Vancouver for a few years, was continuing to teach tennis. And then I went to the University of British Columbia and did a 2-year Bachelor of Education teaching degree. So I've got 3 degrees under my belt.
And you're using them when you're on the courts playing tennis and pickleball, I guess, to second guess, to anticipate, to get in that zone that you can think clearly, quickly?
It's a good question. I'm not sure to what extent my university degrees help me to play pickleball better or to play tennis better, but I would certainly argue that it helps me to coach better. I have spent a lot of time thinking about teaching and learning in a serious way. Philosophy education, that's its reason for being, is to think about what it means to be a teacher, what it means to be a student. And of course, whether you're teaching in a classroom or you're teaching at a university or you're teaching on a pickleball court, you're teaching, you're interacting with people, and you're trying to, you're influencing them in some way, hopefully a positive one. So it has definitely shaped the way that I coach, and shaped the way that I think about coaching and think about sports in general.
As I remember, there was a book out years ago, The Zen of Tennis. Do you subscribe to the Zen of Tennis? And if so, have you read the book? And if so, can you give us an idea of what's between the covers?
It's been years. It's been years since I've read that, and there's been various offshoots of that, right? I think the main principle that you're sort of touching on here is that, and I think viewers would probably identify with this. We all know those moments where you're playing pickleball or you're playing tennis with a friend, and there's no pressure. You're just hitting the ball. It feels great. Everything's going well, and all of a sudden the match starts, and all things don't go so well. We become tense. We become nervous. The shots that were landing on the court that we were hitting effortlessly at first, all of a sudden don't seem to be there. And so something is going on, right? The court hasn't changed, the ball hasn't changed, the person you're playing with hasn't necessarily changed, but that you've changed in some way. And so what they try to do is to identify part of the problem, right? That this change is going on and it's a change that's not helping you perform better, but then also help to identify some solutions. And so, the main change is that often that we're afraid. We're afraid of losing the point. We're afraid of embarrassing ourselves. We're afraid of letting down our partners. We're afraid of looking bad in front of other people. When you're talking about pickleball at the highest levels, we're afraid of not winning the money that we're hoping to win. So fear is often one of the things that interferes with people performing at their best. And books like the one you referenced and others out there try to give people ways to still play at their peak performance and to not let those thoughts and that fear come into play.
How do you manage your fear on the court?
So when it comes to pickleball, I have to say it's rather limited. I mean, pickleball is still relatively new for me. It's still kind of exciting every time I play, and so I find that that it's not so much fear that gets in the way of me playing my best, but sometimes like overexcitement, right? Sometimes too eager to hit the ball. But I do remember quite clearly when I was in university, playing for the University of Toronto. I was the team captain there, and I struggled with underperforming, scared to play. And I remember it was probably my third year of university, I got a phone call, and I found out that one of my best childhood friends, who I sort of lost touch with over the last years, but his younger brother had just been hit by a car and killed. And it was quite shocking for me and devastating. And this was one of the first close people to me who had ever died. And I still played that match, even though the coach gave me the option not to. But for me, the tennis match took on a completely different perspective, right? Given what the information I had just found out, this tennis match was essentially meaningless. And from that point of view, the fear that might have been there about, oh, what if I hit the ball out? What if I lose to this person? What if I let down my teammates? That fear was just because compared to such a significant event of my friend's younger brother dying, that tennis match didn't mean so much. In fact, that tennis match became a joy to play in. It felt like a privilege that I could play tennis. I happened to be playing against a friend of mine. And when you feel like you're doing something and it's such a privilege, you're so happy to be there that there is no room for being afraid or being timid when you play. So that was more than a decade ago. And so even now, on occasion, when I do encounter those feelings, like if I'm competing and it's tough and I find myself getting a little bit tight, I remember back to that lesson that I learned, over 10 years ago, and it helps me change the perspective of what it is that I'm doing now.
How do you prepare for your matches, or how would you advise your students to prepare for their matches?
It's really individual. There are people out there I know who, they really need some alone time, and they go for their game plan, and they're very thoughtful, and they're very introspective, and they work very hard, it seems, to sort of mentally prepare themselves. I know other people who, if they went through that routine, that would just create anxiety for them. And so for them, it is much easier for them to play well if they are relaxed and loose, maybe chatting with friends beforehand. So it's really quite individual. And I think that it's a mistake when coaches try to use a one-size-fits-all model about how to prepare. for me personally, what's most important is that I'm physically ready, so that I'm sweating when I get on the court already, right? The warm-up in pickleball is very short, and if the games can be very short if you're not ready to go right off the bat. So I need to be physically ready. I need to know that I've done the training that I need to do in order to compete well. If I feel like I'm underprepared, that causes problems. And I'm definitely more on the side of I play better when I'm having fun. And for me, having fun means socializing with people. It means watching other matches. I'm not the guy that is going to go and sit in a corner for half an hour before the match starts. That I have tried being that guy, and it doesn't work for me. But there are lots of people for whom it does work.
How do you get your sweat up before your match? What's the routine?
Well, depending on where you are, it doesn't take very much. Right? It's just in Naples, Florida, at the US Open, and you're sweating by just standing out there. But it's important that you're physically prepared. And I made a video once about how to prepare your body. And for most people, there's a general warm up. So whether you run or you skip or you ride the bike, or even if it's just light hitting on the court, something that gets you moving, your muscles are far more likely to stretch and be flexible, which you need in pickleball if they're warm. The other thing that's important is that we don't do sort of old school static stretching. You might have done this before, where you pull your arm across or you pull your arm this way. That actually doesn't do very much. The science is quite clear to prepare you. What does help you to prepare to perform well is to simulate the movements you're going to use during a match. So if that means arm circles, if that means like hip and chest rotations, right? So you're turning, because you use that a lot. We call this dynamic stretching. And if you look at high performance athletes in virtually all sports, that's what you see them doing to prepare to play, simulating in sort of a gentle, controlled way what they're going to do when they get on the court and need to perform.
You talked about the US Open Pickleball Championships in Naples, Florida. Can you tell us about your experience? You flew down there, I suppose.
Yep, I flew down there. I was down there about 9 days before the event started. I live in a small town, as I mentioned before, just about 20,000 people. And while there is a very enthusiastic pickleball community here, in order to get the kind of competition I would get at a major event, I need to travel for that. So I was down in Naples 9 days early, organized some training sessions with different players, went up to the villages a little bit to really get myself ready to compete. And it worked. You have far more confidence when you know that for the last few days you've been competing against very strong players and you're holding your own. So the tournament itself was
oh, wait a minute. Before you get into the tournament, how did you find people to play with when you went down there 9 days ahead of time? Then you went to the villages. How did you find
the internet
the
is amazing. Yeah. Well, so the pickleball community is fairly well. On one hand, it's very large, right? There's many people that play, but it's also very small. And so, especially among sort of top level players, we know each other, and we know each other from tournaments. We know each other from doing online things together, whether we're doing sort of podcasts or shows or different kinds of events. And so it didn't take very much to send an email to someone and say, hey, I'm coming down this date. Are you going to be around to play? And often they would either say, yep, sure, I'm here. So for example, Kyle Yates, I sent him an email and said, hey, I'm going to be near Fort Myers. Are you around? He said, yep, that'd be great. No problem. And as it turned out, he was out of state for longer than expected. But then what he did is he sent me a text and said, hey, Mark, I'm away with my buddy, who's a good player. He's here too. And so all of a sudden you have a new connection. So the network between some of the stronger players is pretty tight. And it didn't take very much to find people to invite you and say, hey, why don't you come down to the villages? You can stay with us for a couple of days. We've got some other guys coming. So it was really, I guess it was at its simplest form, it's networking.
Right, right. You're an A-list player, so you socialize with other A-list players, and they recommend you because of your play. How did you get your rating? Are you a 5.0 or are you a pro? I mean, how did you get to your
Well,
level
so the
of rating?
So there's two ways that players can get rated through the US APA. So one is what they call a self-rating or a self-assessment. And if you go onto the US APA website, you can see the different rubrics they have for the different levels. And you sort of look and you say, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. All right, I'm a X. And for many tournaments, the US APA considers that a legitimate form of rating. However, for some of the top tier events, in order to play in the 5.0 categories, they don't allow just the self-rating. And so what they require is that that someone who's knowledgeable, so it's typically a tournament director from one of the top tier tournaments, they basically vouch for you, right? They say, yes, I've seen so-and-so play, and she is or he is a 5.0 player, 4.5, whatever. So I played the Eastern Canadian Nationals a little over a year ago here in Canada, and as I was getting ready to play the US Nationals in Arizona, I needed someone to vouch for me that yes, in fact, I was a 5.0 player. And so the tournament director, Patricia Archambault from Waterloo, Ontario, she did that. She followed the process through the US APA, sent in the email, and then US APA says, okay, you're good to go. So that's typically how it works for the rating systems. And in these top categories, right, the highest rating right now is 5.0, although they did create a new event, the professional event, the US Open. But as it stands now, the 5.0 is the highest rating.
Do you believe you should be in that pro division?
Yes. And I think, it's a good question. This pro division is a new event, and there are definitely top tier players that I'm going to need to do some work to compete with. But I played the pro event in both the mixed doubles at US Open and as well in the singles. And in both of those events, in the singles, I won a match against a strong player from Philadelphia. And in the mixed doubles, we won several matches in the professional doubles. So, so I feel confident that that's the right place for me.
So you competed in the pro division. Did you win any cash as a result?
Yeah, sorry, I realized I should correct myself. So I played the 5.0 in the mixed doubles. It was the men's. It was the men's doubles. We played the pro. No, so in order to win money, typically in these tournaments, you have to finish in the top 3, right? And so you might still have a pool of 30 players or 30 teams, and it's going to be those top teams that win money. So so far, my bank account has earned $0 from competing in these events, but keep working towards it.
So you competed at the pro level. Can you talk about your match? Do you remember what the score was?
Sure. Like any match in particular. So the singles match, which is maybe to me was one of the most. I wrote about this recently in an article from my newsletter, and it was, I would say, the most competitive singles match I've played. I played a guy named Frank Anthony Davis, who is from Philadelphia, and we had played each other only previously in a mixed doubles event. And Frank, I have never played against someone who was that fast on the court. For your viewers who are familiar with it, singles requires way more running than doubles. You still have the same amount of court you have to cover, but you're by yourself. And so there's a lot more running going on. It was at the end of the tournament. It was over 90 degrees. It was the middle of the day. And Frank, he got every single ball back in play. And the number of times that I'd hit a volley from the net that I was quite sure was winner, I'm almost getting ready to turn around and go back to my towel. And sure enough, there it is. The ball came back one more time. So this match, if I remember the score correctly, it was something like 12-10, 10-12. I think I won the third game 11-6 maybe. I'm not very good at recalling scores, but it was a three-game match. Could have gone either way, and it was a privilege to be able to play such a tough player, and I was pretty proud of how I handled myself. So to me, that was a good indicator that while no matches in a pro division are going to be easy, I suspect, I do believe that I belong there.
So Frank was fast. You played against fast Frank from Philadelphia. Is he older?
That's right.
Yeah. Was he older, younger than you? I know you can't teach speed. Was
Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Was the reason why he had so much speed because he was a youth? He was young?
Oh yeah, so I would say, don't quote me on this, but I would say that the average age in the professional singles division at the US Open, like the vast majority of the players were under 40. I would guess that Frank, I'm 35. I'd guess Frank was probably a few years younger than me. But even those guys that are a bit, I played someone, Chris Miller, who's 42 years old. He's one of the older players in the event, and I mean that guy was fast. And so this is what you see, as the levels go higher and higher and higher. It's not just the paddle skills and the hitting skills that people have. I mean, you can have the best hands in the world, but if you can't get to the ball, it doesn't matter. So this really is what is separating levels of player is how well they move around the court, and that's especially true in singles where you have more court to cover.
So I interrupted you when I said you can't teach speed. You were saying you don't know about that. Can you teach speed?
You can definitely train people to move better on the court. Absolutely. The thing to remember is that pickleball is a sport where you move. It's not like running where you run in a straight direction, right? You're constantly changing directions, and agility. Agility is a skill, and the skill can be developed. Just like hitting a topspin serve or a backhand slice return, you can improve it through deliberate practice and good coaching. And what we're seeing in pickleball, especially at the top levels, coming especially from other sports with great athletic skills, and they're sort of transferring those to a certain extent into pickleball. But you can I regularly work with players on how to move better. In fact, we just put out a video. I think it's called "You Move, You Win," and all this was highlighting some of the best players in the world about how well they move. And the two that I focused on were Kyle Yates and Jennifer Lucore playing mixed doubles together. And I encourage any of your viewers out there, next time you get to go watch top level players play, and this is true whether you're talking pickleball or tennis, spend some time not watching the ball go back and forth, but spend some time on just picking a player and watching them, and you will see how the amount of movement that separates level of players.
I'm bringing your video up on the screen right now.
Oh, great.
You move, you win. Here we are. Let me grab it. Okay. Can you kind of give us a director's cut of this video?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, so this is the intro here where you're just sort of showing different players, and whether it's on the near court, Wes Gabrielson or Alex Hamner, or on the far side, I think that's Kyle playing with Jennifer. What I was really trying to do, and this is why I love going to these big tournaments like the US Open, is you get to show people exactly what it is that the best players do. So as an example, your viewer can pick one person. Okay, so here's a good one of Kyle. This is where we do the close-up. And what I encourage you to do, this is why we did the picture-in-picture, is just watch his feet. Watch how many steps take place. And you can see this when, when you watch, people are watching this at home by themselves. The number of steps, the quantity of these tiny little adjustment steps. This is very different from what people refer to sometimes as the ready position, which is, a really sort of rooted position. You're stopped, you're planted, your hands are out front, and you're essentially reaching for the ball each time. What you see, here comes Jen, and you can see her move. What you see when you watch the best players is how much movement there is, how many little steps there are. The split step, which people often talk about but don't know a whole lot about, is so vital to being able to continue that kind of movement. So, that's what this video is about, is highlighting, is sort of forcing people not to watch the ball go back and forth. That's why I took it from this angle, but instead just to focus on the players. And, it doesn't have to be my videos. People can watch any videos of, top 5 players online, and just watching the player rather than watching the ball can be really, really instructive.
You talk about your videos. You have a very large you got a lot of videos. Let's just put it that way. Lots of videos. Can you talk about making these videos? You're doing them around 2 minutes. Is that the time you're really focused on? A 2-minute video, instructional video?
So the videos really started. They started as a way to share something with people, even if they didn't live here in my town of Collingwood, and they've become quite popular. I try to keep them under 3 minutes, and sometimes as little as 2. I find that you can say a lot in 2 minutes if you do it precisely and if you're careful. I think that people appreciate that they're quick. And when I make these videos, there's sort of 3 things I try to do. I try to make them short. I try to make them useful, right? I try to focus on things that will actually help people play better. And finally, I try to sometimes include, I try to make them easy to watch. So sometimes there's a bit of a sense of humor. Sometimes I've got my kid in it. Sometimes in this most recent video, my dog chose an inopportune moment to relieve herself in the backyard. But people seem to like that, and they like the, people want to watch something where they learn, but also watch something that's enjoyable. And so, going down to these major tournaments gives me a chance to make videos that aren't just featuring me all the time, but featuring some of the top players, which people like to watch.
Well, here's a video of you actually playing. So you also put up some of your tournament play.
Yeah, I try to do it. I don't do a lot of this myself, but this was actually my very first tournament, and I was playing Robert Elliott. It's my first ever tournament. I was playing Eastern Canadian Nationals and playing one of the premier players. I actually played him, and I played Brian Stubb as well in both singles and doubles. And I took this video mainly for myself. I was such a new player. I wanted to see what was actually going on in the court for myself, and I was planning on never publishing this for anyone else, but to try to assess my own game and strengths and weaknesses and to figure out what I needed to work on. And this was a pretty good match. Robert came back and beat me, but I had enough people that asked about it, or they heard about this match, or they wanted to see me playing, and I said, "Oh, I've got this footage that I haven't published anywhere," and people were interested, so I put it up there. And this is sort of the exception, right? All my instructional videos are 2 or 3 minutes long. I think this one is probably 20 minutes long or so.
It's 26 minutes long.
Yeah, so if you like watching pickleball matches, this is a pretty good one. But yeah, this was my first tournament about 18 months ago.
It says 2015. Let me see. Can I see the date here of when you published? I don't know if that's indicate August the 20th, 2015.
Yeah. So it was at this tournament. It was after this tournament that Robert and Brian and Phil Bagley, who were all up there from the villages, they looked at me and said, "Who is this kid?" I was brand new, and it was they who encouraged me to play in the US Nationals in Arizona. And for me, it was a real boost of confidence to have them suggest that I worked to make that happen.
I see you hit the floor here on one of your volleys. Do you find that you hit the floor a lot indoors as opposed to outdoors?
So I try never to hit the floor. it's not a recommended technique. But in that case, it was the only hope. Like, Robert hit a great passing shot, and the only way to get it was to dive for it. You're right. Diving indoors on wooden floors is much more comfortable than outside. But I hate having winners hit past me more than I hate getting a few scrapes and bruises. For me, if that's the only option, that's the option I would rather take than watch the ball go by and he wins a point.
I've been watching a lot of tournament videos on YouTube. I see some guys are now playing with knee pads because they know they're going to be hitting the deck, and they're trying to save their knees. Have you heard anything about pickleball knee pads being important?
I haven't, though. I would say I've seen a couple people with them as well. Look, if you're getting down on your knees on the court, you better hope that the shot you're hitting is a winner, because it is not very likely that you're going to get back up and be able to get in the point and play again. So, I would say in the top divisions, I haven't seen any of the players doing that. I think for most people, it actually would hinder their movement. And diving full out for a ball like that is a pretty exceptional circumstance, right? I've seen Kyle do it a few times, and they come up bloody. But yeah, your chances of winning the point if you're on the ground are slim.
Well, actually, I have a little story. I was playing in no, it wasn't a tournament. It was before the tournament. But I dove for the ball. I just got the ball, hit it over the net, and the person was so perplexed that they caught the ball. I won the point, and she caught the ball, and she stood there, and people said, "He got the ball," and she said, "He did?" So you never know what's going to happen when you dive. And unfortunately, I think my diving days are over because I pulled my groin, and that's been like 2 months ago, and I'm still feeling it. I don't feel as though I'm 100% recovered. So you can dive for a while, but eventually I think it's going to catch up to you. Not only the bumps and the bruises, but just lunging. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, our conversation at the start of this about the importance of preparing your body to play. I mean, if you want to play in an athletic way and be able to move different directions and go forwards and backwards and jump and lunge and do all those things, yeah, of course, there's a certain amount of risk inherent in that. But you can lessen that risk, not eliminate it, but at least lessen that risk by really preparing your body well, right? So that you're loose and so that you're flexible. And I think that's one of the dangers that, when people consider pickleball sort of like a hit and giggle kind of game where you go out and it's very social, which is true, but there is some risk out there. And, I think people would be wise to to limit that risk as much as they can by either, like you say, choosing not to dive, or B, at least doing a good solid warm-up so you're less likely to get hurt.
Yeah, for me, I need to sweat. I need to play for about an hour. I played a tournament, and the first match, I didn't do too well. But it was a round robin type of thing, and so as I started playing the matches, I hit my zone, and that's how I wanted to roll. I want to sweat. I want to get out there and be ready. I want to hit, 100 backhands, 100 forehands. I want to dink for 20 minutes. That's what I need. And I tried to get some people of this tournament to get me warmed up, but they wouldn't have anything of it. They said, I don't want to get tired. I don't want to do this. So I played with them for 3 minutes, and that was it. And then my partner, it was mixed doubles, she wanted to socialize, and you can't degrade that, because that's part of the game, socializing.
That is part of it.
And yeah. So now, because we're socializing, she's playing pickleball, and I'm sitting here on the computer. She networked with people at the tournament, and so she's playing at their private courts, not me.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and that's fine, right? There's different reasons why people play, and if you're playing primarily for social reasons, then great. And if you're playing because you want to compete and you want to win, that's also fine, right? But how you approach both the game and how you approach preparing for the game will be quite different for those two things, right? One of the, I can share my screen with you in a second. Something that people might find helpful is something that you kind of referred to right now. Because you're right that you can't always, while we'd love to hit dinks for 20 minutes before art, the reality is for most people that there's not courts just sitting there open, being ready to be used, right? So what becomes very helpful is if you can practice on your own, right? So here I will pull this out. If you can practice on your own, then you don't even need to be on a pickleball court necessarily. You can still hit your 100 backhands. You can still hit your 100 forehands. You can still hit those dinks or volleys or overheads. And you would actually have a competitive advantage out there compared to your opponents, because while they've had nice chats and are planning their weekend away at the private court.
I know, it's Mark from Third Shot Sports. The other day my friend got sick and couldn't come and train with me, so I thought I'd use that as an opportunity to show you at home.
Winning the matches because you're ready to go.
You're hoping that you're winning the matches.
Yeah. So let's see here. I will, if I can remember how we do this, I'll share my screen.
I'll stop sharing my screen here. I guess since you are going to share your screen, maybe you can go to your website and kind of give us a little tour around your site after you show us this.
Sure. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
So can you see my screen now?
Yeah, practicing without a partner.
This is a video I made. This video is called "Practicing Your Pickleball Game Without a Partner," and
Mark,
sometimes it's either because your partner hasn't. Yep.
Can you click and make it into theater mode so that we don't get the ad over there on the right? No, that's full screen.
How's that?
That's going to be full screen, and that might be a little bit too much for us. Theater mode. Yeah, that one right there. There you go. That's it. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So, this is a simple video. It's 2 minutes and 2 seconds long, and it's a way of doing sort of a systematic warm-up. So this right here was just what I called low-intensity grand strokes, right? So again, the idea is you're warming up at a lower intensity. Right? You can hit volleys against the wall.
Are you hitting against?
And everyone's going to do it at their own intensity.
Are you hitting against a glass wall? Is that why?
No, against, I just set up the camera right below where I knew I'd be hitting, and right by the wall. But yeah, no, there's no glass there. Yeah, here it is from the other angle.
I see.
It's as well as ground strokes and volleys. You can also, yeah. Right. And everyone's going to do it at their own rate. You could put a target up there if you wanted to aim for. You could hit overhead smashes. Yeah, so there's things that you can do even if you're on your own. So if you like, we can take a quick look at the website.
And then maybe you can talk about your experience at the US Open in Naples. I know we keep talking around it, but I really want to focus in on your experience and what you thought of the first annual championships down in Naples.
Yeah, sure. So here, well, we can talk about that while I wait for how do I turn the screen sharing off?
You don't have to turn it off. I think you can just go right to your website from there. But anyway, okay. You're back.
Yeah. So so the tournament was great. To me, this was a tournament that set a new bar, a new standard for what pickleball tournaments could be. And whether it was the venue that they had, whether it was the volunteers that they had, the food for the players, the prize money of that. It was really quite an event. There were more than 800 players. CBS Sports was there and is going to be posting it. It really set a standard, I think, that other tournaments are going to ask themselves whether they can follow up with.
Yeah, I'm a foodie. I'm a vegetarian. I eat healthy, no GMOs. Talk about the food at the US Open. There was, I guess, the pros, the VIPs, they got free food. What kind of selection of food did they have there for health-conscious individuals like myself?
That's a good question. So I would hesitate to call it free food because everyone, even the pros, paid entry fees for this tournament, right? And you're right, that was the same section as the VIP section or the sponsor section. And in fact, people who played paid significantly higher entry fees. So someone's paying for the food somewhere along the line. But you're right, it was together in a tent that was a little bit separate. The food back there, kind of like anywhere, was sort of it was mixed. So there were lots of days where there were sandwiches with meat or vegetarian. There were salads. There was and sometimes there's like your sort of typical vegetable salad, or there was seafood salad there a couple of days. It was a fairly mixed bag, and they realized that in that section there'd be both people who were there purely as spectators, right, who could probably afford with having a heavier meal, but also lots of players who just needed something to eat before a match. So I know in the mornings there was coffee, there was juice, there were granola bars that people could grab. It was a real mixed bag. I think that each day they had a different local restaurant or local caterer providing the food. I certainly didn't taste all of it because, gladly, I was competing a lot of the time. But you're right, there wasn't, I know that sometimes at restaurants now they give you very detailed lists of what's in the food you're eating and where does it come from, and there wasn't that. But I would say that overall, if I had to rate it out of 10 in terms of sort of healthful eating back there, I'd probably give it a 7. It was definitely delicious, most of it.
That counts for something.
That counts for a lot, yeah.
So tell us about your US Open experience. You were down there 9 days before it started. Do you find that was beneficial for you to be there those 9 days? And did you stay in people's houses, or did you stay in a motel, or did you have an RV? Where did you sleep at night?
So Yeah, so I went down there, like we said, 9 days earlier, and luckily for me, my in-laws each April, they rent a little place on an island called Sanibel Island, which is a little bit up the west coast of Florida. It's about an hour from Naples. So I was lucky that for those first couple of nights, I was able to stay there and travel to Naples to train. I had two friends from Collingwood, from my town, who were staying at the villages. They were there for a month or so. They invited me to come up whenever I liked and stay there. So I used that as an opportunity to both my partner, Mike Donnellan, who's from Tallahassee and happened to be in the villages at that time, as well as Robert Elliott, Phil Bagley, Brian Staub. So I got a couple, solid days of training with those guys. I then moved west. So the villages is just south of Orlando. So I continued to move east to the other coast, where I had organized some pickleball clinics to teach. And so I ended up teaching 4 clinics over 2 days in different, in Vero Beach and another place called Titusville and a place called Sebastian. And I was very grateful. Pickleball ambassadors around there who were very kind in helping me out, either with setting up courts or securing court spaces, or even giving me a place to stay to save a little bit of money. And so after those clinics were done, I back across to the West Coast, and it was now time to get ready for the tournament to start. So in Naples proper, there's a man from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, who had followed some of the work I've done online. He had a winter home in Naples, and he said, "Mark, if you need a place to stay, you're welcome to stay here." I actually had a few people say that. So people were very kind and very generous and supportive of me being able to compete as well as I could without, really breaking the bank.
It sounds like this was a working trip for you, and you were able to make some money as a result of putting on your clinics.
Yeah, I mean, with very, very few exceptions, those of us who play pickleball at a fairly high level and travel to compete at these tournaments still have to have day jobs. And sometimes people have day jobs in a related field, right? As a tennis coach, as a pickleball coach, but other times people have jobs in other fields, right? It takes time to go to these tournaments, and it takes time, especially for me, where I have to go elsewhere in order to really train. And I've got a young family at home that people still need to eat. And so being able to combine these clinics with doing the training I need to do in order to compete is really helpful. In addition to that, we ran all the videos, the newsletters, everything that I do online, the website is all 100% free. And so about 10 months ago, we started a fundraising campaign, and we said, hey, if you like what we're doing, if you find value in what you're getting for free, the videos, the newsletters, etc., and you'd like to support it, you'd like to support me competing at these tournaments, you can kick in some money. And people were very generous. I think over the course of the campaign, I think we raised a little over $7,000. And while that's not while that's not a ton of money in the grand scheme of things, it definitely made it possible for me to go and compete at these tournaments without forcing sort of undue hardship on the rest of my family.
Has that campaign ended?
I think it's still officially up on there on the GoFundMe page. It'll end shortly because this really was a targeted campaign. It was to help pay for both the trip to Arizona for nationals and this trip to Florida. So at this point, I I will very shortly shut it down, say thank you very much, and you know, and that'll be that. Now that the pickleball clinics are becoming busier and busier, and more often now people are having me travel to their city or town to be able to deliver clinics. Now that I can generate more revenue from that, I don't need to rely on the people donating to the campaign the way I did at the start of this project.
Do you have a business model that you're following?
I do. I mean, I'm not following necessarily someone else's model, but I have a business plan, and that plan is evolving. Third Shot Sports has grown much faster than I expected. This is largely because of the internet and because of videos, but also through the this is something now you can see on the website under the tab Pickleball. You'll see something called 3S at your club. And so it's the third one down. And essentially what this is I've been receiving a lot of requests from people for some time now, where they basically say, hey, would you ever consider coming to our club? Or I wish I lived closer to you. And so what we offer now is that that I will come to you, and we find a way to make this happen. You know, whoever's hosting it, they provide the facilities, right? And I'll come down, and we do 8 hours of coaching each day, and this is a way to, you know, it's reasonably priced. People, you know, for most people, it's fairly affordable, and it's a way to bring these clinics to people outside of my immediate region. So I just finished doing this I mentioned Florida. I did 2 days of this in San Antonio, Texas. Later this summer, I'm heading to both the west coast of Canada and the east coast of Canada. And I'm back in Austin, Texas in September.
I see video analysis on the sidebar. Is that new?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's brand new. And it's a pretty straightforward idea. People have been saying, hey, Mark, if you click on that, you'll get more of a description. You know, they said, I wish that you could be here to see my backhand. I don't know what's going on with it, or my serve is always going out. I wish you could help me. And so what we've now set up is a video analysis product. So what people can do is they can send me, they take video of themselves to YouTube, or just send it to me if they're able to do that, up to 15 minutes long. So you can actually pack a lot of content into 15 minutes. And what I'll do is I'll take a look at the video, and I will give general feedback about the video itself and how they're playing. I'll give specific feedback about things that are going on. And then importantly, I think, some specific ideas about what they can do to improve, what kinds of drills they can do. If you scroll down a little bit further, Jack, you'll see there's a little bit more.
Oh,
and
there
so what
it
this
is.
provides,
Okay.
yeah. So here's what you'll get, and you get detailed feedback. You get a plan for what you could do to improve, and then there's a few tips on how to get the most out. So sometimes people have really specific questions. Hey, Mark, why does my backhand slice always go so high? Or why is my dink always being volleyed by my opponents? And other times people have general questions. They just say, you know what, I want to get better. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at these videos up to 15 minutes long and provide that kind of feedback. And it's $25, and that's 25 Canadian dollars. So last time I checked the exchange rate, that was like $19.80 US. So I think it's an affordable way for people to get professional feedback without having to bring me down to Boston or San Antonio or Chicago or wherever.
And how do you give the feedback? Do you write it out, or do you do a director's cut where you watch the video and then you talk over the top of it?
Yeah, it's more like that. So I try to do things as much as I can where it's visual, right? So the same way that when I make my videos right now that people can watch, it'll be something like that. I'll also include a written element, right? Because people don't always have their computers with them. But there'll be a written element and say, hey, here's a drill you could do to improve your backhand volleys, right? And it can be a specific outline. So it's a pretty comprehensive thing. And the idea is that it gives people a chance to get better without having to, either travel to me or have me travel to them.
What's the future for you? What tournaments do you have lined up? What clinics do you have lined up? Do you have a calendar that people can go to and see where in the world is Mark?
So right now, the way that the third shot at your club goes is people bring me there. So I know some other coaches will say, hey, I'm doing a tour. I'm going to Louisiana and Alabama and Florida, and here are the places I'm going to be, and you just sign up. I'm not doing that, but approach me either by calling me or by emailing me or through the third shot at your club. What we'll do is we'll say, okay, great, you've got a club, you've got people, let's find a date and then we go. So it's not publicly available like that for anyone to come, but all it takes is for someone who, has a group of friends they think would be interested to get in touch, and then we set it up. In terms of the tournaments, at the end of the summer, I'm planning on playing the tournament in Ogden, Utah. That's the end of August, the beginning of September. I'll be playing the US Nationals again in Casa Grande, Arizona. That's in November. And then throughout the rest of this summer, I'm really focusing on, as well as training, I'm doing my coaching, my tennis clinics, private lessons, my pickleball clinics and private lessons. So it's a busy next 4 or 5 months for me.
That's pickleball. How about tennis? Do you participate in any tennis tournaments?
So they're more and more limited. I've done that for a long time now. I've been teaching tennis for 20 years, and I've been competing longer than that. And so while I still run Tennis Down, Third Shot Sports runs tennis programs at a variety of different locations, both private facilities and public facilities. So I'm really sort of focused on the coaching side when it comes to tennis. And I'm getting more than enough competition than I need out of pickleball. So aside from, I'm doing a couple pro-am events for tennis this summer as a fundraiser for a club that I used to work at that needs to resurface its courts. So aside from events like that, I'm not doing a lot of tennis competing right now.
Do you think there'll be a day when you don't pick up a tennis racket where it will all be pickleball?
That's a good question, and that's something I've been confronting now for a little while. The degree to which pickleball is taking off makes that a more and more likely scenario. Right now, in my town, tennis is still strong. People are enjoying it. It's a growth industry here, but there's only so many hours in the day, and I don't have a crystal ball, but if I did, I don't see pickleball getting any smaller. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If anybody has any questions for Mark, they can post questions on the event landing page in the Q&A tab. We are monitoring that. Or, Mark, you said that you had some questions emailed to you before we went live. Do you want to address any of those questions?
Well, the questions primarily were, hey, when is this thing starting? I want to be able to see it.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
What I can share with you is, no, that's fine. So one thing I can share, so if you can see on the page that you're on, so under pickleball, we have newsletters. And so I invite anyone who's interested, go to the website, go to pickleball, go down to newsletter. We have a newsletter that comes out about once a week or so. I try to make it pretty regular, and you can sign up very easily there. If you click on the red button that says here, you can see all our archived newsletters, And so this is where we post videos, we post tricks and tips and articles about different things. One of the features we often use is called Ask a Coach. And what people can do is they can just send in a question that they have for a coach. So the most recent one, I think, was, hey, I'm at my club and there's a new member. He's just joined and he's really aggressive on the court. And he hits balls hard at people's bodies, even at their heads, very frequently. What can I do about this, right? I don't want to play with them anymore. And so what this Ask a Coach feature does is it gives my opinion. It's not the only opinion, but it gives my opinion about how you might handle that situation or what you might do. So people who have questions, the newsletter is a good way to go. They can always email me. We try, just like the videos, I try to make them short and relevant and sometimes with a sense of humor. We try to make the newsletters be the same way. So yeah, this is one of the recent ones about some of the lessons I learned.
Is this a PDF file? I'm not familiar with this website. This isn't your website, us9.campaign archive 2.
Yes. Yep. So to distribute the newsletter, we use MailChimp. And MailChimp is a commonly used email and newsletter form. And then what happens is they archive them. Yeah, so that's MailChimp at the bottom. So so I'm not sure why that's the URL that always comes up. But yeah, it's the archives of the website MailChimp. It's great, people.
I was going to say, I see that you use Google Docs for your archives, and so I guess in my mind, why wouldn't you continue to use Google Docs as a place to post your archived newsletters, since you can archive PDF files on there, and you would have more control over it as opposed to what, Chipmonkey, whatever it's called, MailChimp, because if you don't pay the bill, that can all disappear for you very quickly. MailChimp, Chipmonkey, whatever.
The about MailChimp is that it's 100% free.
Oh, it's 100% free. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to say, I always take it as a really good compliment when someone emails me and says something about how they like the newsletter or the videos. My background dealing with technology is not nearly as strong as my background dealing with people and doing coaching. And so as this business developed, I've had to learn a lot of the technology as we go. And one of the neat things about these archives is, if I really want to feel bad about myself, I'll go back to the first or the second newsletter that I've ever done. And it's at the very, very bottom if you want to torture yourself and torture me. And you can see sort of, how low quality it was right at the start, because this was all very new to me. And I was, like anything, you're just trying to get your feet wet, right? It's sort of the difference between that first day you played pickleball compared to what it's like after you've played for a number of years. So what's the thing about the duck? You lucky duck icon. It's the very top of your first newsletter. Jack, it's a joke. You lucky duck.
Oh, that we're a lucky duck because we found it?
You're a lucky duck because you are part of the very first ever newsletter. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Because my first thing is that at the top is a lucky duck, and at the bottom will probably be your dead duck.
Yeah. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can see, they're not nearly as polished as they are now, and even now they're not always perfect. But it's something I'm working on to make them easier for people to watch or easier for people to read, and it's all a work in. It's all a work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see the kernels are there at your very first newsletter here. Program start in January. you're out there promoting your clinics.
Yeah, and at the time, I think at the time there were 20 people subscribed. I worked very hard to get those 20 people on my newsletter list, and it was just local people, right? And that's what this was supposed to be, was just like a small local thing. But what's happened is, through word of mouth and through the videos and whatever, people are gravitating towards it and are pretty happy. So it's become occasionally specific references to the clinics going on in my town. The newsletter now is much more global in nature. So I'm hoping that whether you live in California or Florida or Arizona or Maine, you find something valuable in the newsletter.
Do you have any plans on traveling to Europe or to Japan or Australia?
There's currently no plans to do that, but I know that there are different groups that are starting to do that. I know that there's more and more players emerging in those countries. There's a few different providers that do these pickleball tours to those places. So, I'm open to discussing it, right? It has to be the right situation. While it's lovely to go to those places and introduce pickleball to people or help people play better, there's also a cost associated, and it means leaving my family for an extended period of time. I've got a 2-year-old daughter, who, if people watch the videos closely, will have seen a number of times. So it's got to be the right opportunity to do it. But I do think you'll see more and more players emerging in different countries as time goes on.
Can you talk about paddles? Everybody seems to have a paddle. Everybody's putting their name on a paddle. You have a paddle here, I think, that's on your website. Talk about paddles, pickleball paddles.
Sure. It's a really interesting time when it comes to equipment in pickleball. I think the companies that currently exist are seeing huge opportunities for growth, and what they're really doing is trying to outcompete each other and to get greater market share. Some of the bigger companies have an advantage when it comes to doing that, and some smaller ones, it's tougher for them. I know one of the small companies we often deal with, called Singleton Paddles. They're a small Canadian company, and the quality of their product is so high, they get so many demands, but there's only so much they can produce, right? So the companies are really right now in a little bit of a contest with each other to see who can create sort of the latest and greatest, or at least who can market something as the latest and greatest and get the publicity they need in order to sell them. We work with all the companies that you see listed here, whether it's Singleton or Engage or ProLite or Selkirk. We work with them. They're partners of ours that we can get people discounts on those paddles off the retail price. So all someone has to do is send me an email or from this page where it says click here. And what we can do is I send them a promo code, and they can save themselves a few bucks when they're buying a paddle next time from one of those companies.
Are there paddles out there that will give you more spin, that will give you more power? I know that with tennis, you focus on strings. You got all kinds of different types of strings, tensions of strings. Do you find that with paddles? Is there a paddles or technology that will give you better spin on the ball? And is spin important? Especially if you're playing.
Yes,
especially if you're playing a dink game. If somebody hits it in the air, spin doesn't do much good to you.
Right. So in general terms, yes, paddles are very different, and how the paddle plays, how the paddle performs, is related to the materials it's made of. It's related to the weight of the paddle. It's related to the width of the paddle, how thick it is. So if you find 5 different paddles, you will get 5 different feels when you hit the ball. So this is why it's helpful for some players to go out and try paddles before they buy them. In terms of spin, the main factor that influences the spin is, when it comes to the paddle, is how rough the surface is. And so the US APA has guidelines about, not just guidelines, rules and regulations about how rough a paddle surface can be. The rougher the surface, the more friction it can create, and the more friction it can create with the ball, the more spin that's possible. So the companies are really sort of pushing the edge when it comes to how much spin they can produce, and how rough their paddles are. So each company now, as you go to them, you'll be able to feel that they've got rougher and rougher paddles. Some of them get then rejected by the US APA and they're pulled off the market. That happened recently with ProLite and their Apex paddle. Spin is important because, well, for a few different reasons. One is it can affect how the ball bounces. And if your opponent isn't used to how the ball might bounce when it's got, say, side spin on it or back spin, it can be very effective. It's especially important hitting top spin. So if I hit the ball in such a way that the ball's spinning away from me as it flies away from me, that's called top spin. And top spin makes the ball drop. And what happens is when the ball drops, that then allows me, I could hit the ball nice and hard. I could hit the ball fairly high over the net. And if there was no spin, that ball would likely fly straight out the back. But with the top spin, that can help to bring the ball down into the court. So you see top players using top spin more and more when they're hitting serves, and especially when they're hitting returns of serve. It allows them to hit hard while still playing with a relatively large margin for error.
How can you hit top spin on a legal pickleball serve? Because everything has to be below your belt. It has to be kind of like a bowling serve. Though I see a lot of pros and a lot of 5.0 players hitting more of a side underhand serve, which gives you more power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the myths out there is that the serve has to be kind of a bowling action, right? While it could be a bowling action, and we see some coaches encourage that, it's definitely an older approach to serving. So while the bowling action is definitely legal, it's not the only way you have to serve. Remember the rule, at least that it has to be a low to high path. And so while the bowling action definitely is a low to high path, I could have something that's not quite as extreme. So you're right, I can't hit a sidearm serve, that's not allowed. So what I can do is I can hit an almost sidearm serve. As long as the paddle is moving from low to high when I hit, and satisfies that aspect of it, right? The upward component, then I'm okay. And so this is what you see. You see very few top players using the bowling action, right? It's overly limiting. It sort of forces you to hit upwards. It's not, I definitely don't recommend it when I'm teaching people. So what happens is the serve, here, I'll pull it up on my screen.
Hi, it's Mark from Third Shot Sports, and today we have a quick tip on how to practice your serve and make it.
But see, I'm a tennis player, and I've used a side serve, or I did, and it comes in at a blistering pace, and people can't handle it. They can't handle the serve, and so I've been hit a number of times with, you're doing an illegal serve, and I say I'm not. I look at the videos. I am under my paddle is under my wrist. It's from bottom to top, but they don't want the blistering serve that I deliver. So therefore, I have to tone it down so I can play with them, or else they're not going to play with me. Actually, they don't play with me anyway. But
well, so we talked earlier about why.
Though you can be in that gray area of the serve, and you could quote be legal, the community that you play with might say, we don't want you to serve that way. It's like, well, I can show you that, and then you become argumentative to them. and they feel as though you're trying to put something off on them because what they have in their mind is a bowling type of serve.
Yeah, so often people, sorry, can you see the video that I'm playing now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, right, so look, sometimes people are not going to understand the rules, sometimes they're going to be ignorant of what the rules are. You will have people who sometimes say, don't serve so hard, I don't like it's their prerogative to say that. It's also your prerogative to not play with them or do something else.
That's right.
But the rule is that it has to be an upward. So here's the rule, right? This is a low to high path, right? The paddle is going upwards. You can see the top of my paddle below my wrist, right? And I'm making contact below my belly button, which is where your waist is defined. So this is how you do, here it is in slow motion. Right, so I'm satisfying all of those rules, but doing so in a way that I can get an advantage with my serve. I can hit it hard, I can hit it with topspin, so I can hit reasonably safely over the net. So people might not like it, they might find it difficult to handle, that's fine. Maybe I shouldn't play with those people. Or if I'm out there to play a social game, you're right, maybe I can do what hit it that way. But in terms of following the letter of the law, this is, not only is this fine, this is what you see the vast majority of top players doing.
That's right.
So
I know. That's what I say. So you're putting topspin on your serve with that motion.
Yeah, so the topspin comes, here's me sort of explaining. The topspin comes when you brush up from low to high, right? So the paddle's moving upwards, and it comes when there's my hand, and you're brushing up the back of the ball. So that's what creates the spin. That's what causes it to rotate over the top like that, right? And that rotation then helps the ball. Yes, it initially goes upwards, but then it starts to then drop into the court, right? And so it's really important that the paddle face be straight up and down, right? There we go. If your paddle face is open when you hit this low to high path, the ball is going to go sailing up very high, right? So this is why it's important that it's a perpendicular paddle face. But yeah. So you can see sort of all over the place. This is what you'll see is that it's not the bowling action, although it is still a low to high action, and that is the key. Right?
Low to high.
So. Yeah, it's got to be low to high, and the paddle face has to be perpendicular to the court in order to really brush up the back of the ball.
Okay, I'll use that in my next argument.
Yeah. Now, that's not to say every time someone does a topspin serve, it's legal, right? You could do a topspin serve and be making contact above your waist, right? That would be illegal. You could do a topspin serve and have the top of your paddle, your wrist joint, so that would be illegal. Right, so not all topspin serves are illegal, but not all topspin serves are legal either. It's sort of on a case-by-case basis. This is where having some video evidence is helpful, because they say it's illegal, you say it's legal, and how are you going to sort out that debate, right? So.
And you could do
playing this really social.
And I was thinking you could do 75% legal serves, and you could do 30% illegal serves. I mean, because it is a gray area, who's going to say where that point is between legal and illegal, since you're in a gray area?
Yeah, this is one of the most difficult things to sort of deal with, and I've talked with different players and different coaches and referees about the challenge of calling the illegal serve. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, yes. I thought for some reason we got disconnected.
It seems like there's a video if this ever unfreezes. I made a video here called How to Deal with an Illegal Server. Maybe your friends that you play with should watch this. But essentially, let's say you're playing with someone who you believe is having an illegal serve, and you're playing a social event, or you're playing at your local gym. I guess you've got two options, right? One is you can, even after telling them initially, hey, I think your serve's illegal, you can continue to do battle with them and criticize them and get angry, or you can just move on, right? One of the options is, let's say someone's doing an illegal serve and they can now hit it way harder than they would normally. Well, I might say to that person, hey, this is great. This is now giving me a chance to work on returning a really fast serve. That's great for me, right? So it doesn't always it doesn't have to be a fight, right? It's just pickleball. It's a game. So if you believe that someone out there is doing illegal serve, yeah, I think you should probably let them know and let them know why.
Now I can't hear you. Hello, Mark. Come in, Mark. Here, let me end. It appears as though we have lost connection with Mark. Now, Mark can rejoin us, and I will hang in here for a minute. And if he doesn't, we will end this live stream broadcast. You can watch the recording on the YouTube channel. I will be doing a number of these interviews. I'm going to be cutting this interview into some sections, so you don't have to watch the entire thing. You can watch a 2-minute clip, a 3-minute clip. I can get it so that we can focus on the attention span of the internet viewers out there. Let me see if anybody has posted any questions. It doesn't appear so. Okay. My name is Jack Olmsted. I'm Port Townsend, Washington. Been playing pickleball when? Well, first of the year. That's when I got 4 wooden paddles. December, right before Christmas. So what is it? We're 5 months. So 5 months, but I haven't been able to get out on the court. I've been sitting here on the computer because I'm surrounded by gated communities and they're all private. But I'm trying to get more activities in my local town of Port Townsend. You can go check out my blog at pttennis.blogspot.com. I started that a year ago when I was trying to find people to play tennis with. Here we go. Here's Mark.
Sorry about that.
I just been running at the mouth here, telling our viewers a little bit more about me since you weren't there.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Technical issue.
Well, that's okay. It freezes, and that's what we're living with.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought we could just shut it down. We've been going for almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think I'm about. I need to say goodbye as well.
That's right. You've got things to do, people to see, clinics to give.
That's right.
Well, thanks so much, Mark.
Yeah, today is a. What do we've got today? We've got 6 hours of kids tennis lessons and a few adult lessons today. So, yeah.
Go, go, go.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you on social media?
Sure. Yeah, in all the usual places. So you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube. Just look up Third Shot Sports. We're there for all of them. Like I said before, our newsletter is sort of the first place that we post our stuff. So if you go to thirdshotsports.com, look under pickleball, you'll find our newsletter. It's a piece of cake to subscribe to. If you hate it, you can always unsubscribe. But that doesn't happen very often. And as always, I love hearing from people. So even if it's a quick email to say, hey, Mark, saw you on the show and thought it was great, or hey, Mark, got a question, or I think this video is wrong. I love hearing from people. So they can always send an email, mark@thirdshotsports.com, and or find us in any of those other social media places.